Dr. Agnes Kalibata, President of the Alliance for Green Revolution in Africa and Special Envoy of the United Nations Secretary General for the Food Systems Summit. She's in charge of this entire Africa Growth Green Revolution Forum. Excellencies, heads of government, high-level organizations from around the world, cabinet secretaries, ministers, government officials, both physically present and online, captains of industry, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed, welcome to the AGRF 2021. Welcome to Nairobi, the green city in the sun. My name is Jeff Koinange, and I will be your guide throughout the next hour or so, and throughout several sessions throughout the remainder of the week. Now, this is a hybrid event, which means there are in-person presence here, and also, at last count, about 10,000 people who have registered online. So it's great to see many of you here. If it's your first time in Nairobi, welcome. If you're a frequent visitor, welcome back to Nairobi. I'd also like to extend a warm welcome to all those people online right now. And we're looking forward to a great session this afternoon. Food systems transformation, accelerating action. Please feel free to contribute by asking questions, giving comments, and interacting online. Because let's face it, this is your stage. Everyone here has a stake in how we build back better. And for all those of you who are online, the hashtag, please, let's continue using it, AGRF 2021. Again, AGRF 2021. Let's get started. Food systems transformation, accelerating action. First up, Dr. Maximo Torero is the chief economist of the Food and Agriculture Organization, the FAO. Now, he joined the organization back in January 2019 as Assistant Director General for Economic and Social Development Department. Prior to joining FAO, he was the World Bank Group Executive Director for Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, Paraguay, Peru, and Uruguay. Dr. Torero, welcome to AGRF 2021, sir. And if you can hear me, thank you, sir.
Yeah, I can hear you perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your time, sir. Real quick, first up, sir, what factors determine agricultural competitiveness, and are there any best practices for upscaling, sir?
Look, the problem we face today is that we need to have an agricultural sector that is not only competitive in terms of cost effectiveness, but it's also competitive in terms of making the food system, the agri-food system, sustainable. And that requires to take into account the environmental impacts, the depletion of natural resources, and also, of course, that includes water, but also the reduction of emissions of greenhouse gas emissions. And that's a complexity because it's a different way to look at competitiveness. But that's the only way we will have an agricultural sector which is sustainable over time. And this is of extreme urgency for Africa and for Africa's food systems because they are unsustainable right now, and there are things that are not working well that needs to be changed. And that means that we need to bring innovative solutions and solutions that we can scale up to resolve these problems, to resolve the problem that we have more than 1/3 of the people suffering from hunger in the world in 2020 in Africa, and 46 million more than in 2019. Estimates indicate that an additional 25 to 42 million people may be undernourished due to the impact of COVID-19, and women and children bear a brand of these members. In 2020, 37% of the world's stunted children are living in sub-Saharan region, and 30% of women in the region aged 15 to 49 years are affected by anemia. So these numbers are intrinsically linked to affordability and income inequality, with 1 billion people in Africa unable to afford a healthy diet. And second, production systems in the region are also below par compared to other regions. Cereal production on per capita level has not improved significantly over the past 30 years. Vegetable supply, important for micronutrients, also remains below the world average of 142 kilograms per capita per year, with the exception of North Africa. And degradation rates of grasslands of the region stand at 40%, 65% to Eastern Africa. So this lack of balance between what we need to have, the environment, and the problem that we have on access to healthy diets, I think brings a huge challenge for the African continent. But I also think that there are solutions from where we can learn. We know, for example, that there is ways in which we can improve the behavior of consumers to move towards more healthy diets. We know that there are technologies and technological packages that could create the transformation that we need, but we also need to understand that those technological packages needs to take into account the trade-offs, the negative effects that they will have. So for example, if we put a technological package that tries to reduce emissions from cattle by using new ways of producing meat, if we try to bring extension services on soil practices to absorb emissions, all those will require also to take into consideration that there could be a negative externality over land, soil, over water, over environment, and could be more emissions. So we need to find policies to compensate for those trade-offs so that we can move in a sustainable way.
Yeah,
also, we know today, and I finish here, that digital technologies can play a crucial role. We know that it's a cost-effective mechanism that could have a huge return. So that's something that we can scale up, and I can explain later if you want how. And finally, we know that reducing food losses and waste will create a triple win. It will reduce emissions, it will make us use better our natural resources, and it will also increase productivity and access to healthy diets. Back to you.
Okay, Dr. Torreira, real quick, as we race towards 2050 and achieving net zero, what are the critical levers within the food systems as you see them?
Look, as we move to 2030, to be able to achieve the SDG 2, for example, and also it will be too optimistic to think that we will have zero emissions, but I think we have a lot of improvements to be done. But for me, the critical levers first is to have the institutionality so that we can bring the technology that needs to be put in place. Meaning having institutionality means to have the regulatory mechanisms and the information and the science-based driven information to make the proper decisions on the technological change. The second major lever is that we need to measure these externalities that I was referring so that we can put policies and technologies in place or policies that will minimize those trade-offs. And the third one is trade. In the case of the African continent, if we look today, the number of food groups that we require to have access to healthy diets is the continent that has the less number of food groups that we need to have access to healthy diets. And that requires a significant transformation. And the only way we're going to resolve this is opening to trade, especially intra-regional trade in the case of Africa, where there is already an agreement, but we have to move fast into the implementation.
Dr. Torreira, a moment ago you mentioned reducing food losses. Is that even possible? Because we lose so much food per day.
Look, in terms of losses that go from post-harvest to the wholesale market, in the global, we are in average on 14%. In terms of waste, 17%. But if we move to the African continents, the numbers get a lot bigger, especially on high-value commodities. Now, in losses, it's difficult, especially when you have a lot of smallholders. But there are clear technological innovations and technological packages that will allow you to reduce that. For example, we know that there is a problem of aflatoxins. We can reduce that by better packaging, better post-harvest technologies, and especially better drying technologies appropriate for smallholders. We can also improve the value chain by improving access to cold chains, which are central to expand the life of the high-value commodities. Today, that is missing in many parts of Africa, and we need to accelerate that process, and we need to create mobile storage facilities with cooling facilities so that we can also have a service provision to smallholder farmers. So there are different ways in which we can do it. In the case of waste, which normally we don't talk about waste in developing countries, I think there is a lot that we can do also. We need to start now changing the behavior of people and trying to make people understand that we cannot waste food. And that could be a significant innovation too, to move in parallel with both dimensions in the case of the African continent.
Dr. Maximo Torreira, I like what you said. We need to start right now. Thanks so much for your time, sir. We appreciate it. And all the very best during the rest of the conference here.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Up next, Ms. Hanneke Faber. She's the President, Foods and Refreshment Foods at Unilever. Now, she joined Unilever back in January 2018 as President of Europe and member of the Unilever Executive. In this role, she delivered strong results and accelerated the digitization of European business. Hanneke spent most of her career in the FMCG and retail industry. Prior to joining Unilever, she worked at Royal Arnold Delays as Chief E-commerce and Innovation Officer and member of the Executive Committee, playing a key role in accelerating the company's e-commerce business. Hanneke Faber, thanks so much. Welcome to AIGRF 2021. Let me ask you real quick, Hanneke. What actions and critical changes do we want various food systems actions to adopt in the next 10 years in order to transform food systems in general? What do we need to adopt?
Yeah, absolutely critical that we don't wait 10 years. The crisis is now, and we're delighted at Unilever to see the IPCC report. I think that really brought home the crisis is now. We got to take action now. I think the food system transformation areas that Dr. Kalibata has set out for the world, for the United Nations Food Summit are outstanding. Nourishing all, we have to do that with ideally less meat and more plants. Second, she set out nature-based solutions for production, so important. Third, equitable livelihoods, and fourth, resilience. And all those areas are reflected in our commitments at Unilever. We've publicly committed to deliver €1 billion in plant-based sales, to double the number of products that have positive nutrition, to reduce our food waste by half, and to start really implementing and fast regenerative agriculture practices, which are so critical for protecting the planet, the soil, the water we all depend on.
Yeah, and at the same time, what are some of the exciting innovations that can potentially be regenerative and contribute to nourishing food futures going forward?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of exciting product innovation happening. For example, in the plant-based space, we all have to depend a little bit less on meat and dairy, especially in the Western world. So products like the Vegetarian Butcher, which is a new brand we have in meat replacement, but also vegan ice creams, vegan mayonnaise, those are all really exciting. I think the other area of innovation that is, again, so important is regenerative agriculture. And that's more of a how, it's not a new product, but it's the way we grow and make our products. And to us at Unilever, that's really about I call it the 3 C's. You need to pick a crop, a country, and then form a coalition to work on regenerative agriculture together. One of our best examples remains, and we started this in 2017, the way we grow tea in Rwanda. And again, thanks to the vision of then President Kalibata and the Rwandan government, we were able to create a very ambitious new tea project that created, in the beginning, about 1,000 jobs for smallholder farmers in one of the poorest districts of Rwanda. We built a factory there. We established a small plantation in partnership with the government, with the Wood Foundation Africa, and the UK's Department for International Development, DFID. And the aim was to help around 6,000 people earn a decent salary and a sustainable living as smallholder tea farmers. These people were trained in smart, sustainable farming techniques. And today, that Rwanda tea plantation produces tea that can compete with the very best in the world in sustainable ways. We agreed last year that we were going to double the size of the plantation, plan a second factory. And when those are done, we expect to benefit more than 10,000 smallholder farmers. That's the kind of innovation that we really like to see because it benefits, again, smallholder farmers, the country, but also us as a company looking for great quality tea. So that would be one of my favorite examples.
Yeah, Hanneke Faber, I like that. Crop Country Coalition. Wonderful, appreciate it. Thanks so much for your time. All the very best during the remainder of the summit.
Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, Dr. Juliet Biao is the United Nations Environment Program Director and Regional Representative for Africa, has a wealth of experience in international development, over 30 years, managing development initiatives in Latin America, Canada, and Africa. And by the way, she has previously served as the Minister for Environment and Nature Protection in Benin, as well as Acting Minister of Family and Child. Dr. Juliet Biao, if you can hear me, if you're online, if you can hear me. Yes, you are. There you go. Dr. Biao.
Yes, I can hear you.
There you go. Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Biao. I appreciate your time. And, we talk about potential contribution of localized food production to the overall sustainability of food systems. Tell us a little bit about that.
Thank you so much for extending the invitation to the United Nations Environment Program. According to FAO, 80% of food will be consumed in cities by 2050. In Africa, urban consumers will represent 50% by that same year. I think, yes, we have a problem of unsustainable consumption and production. As people become wealthier, their diets tend to change to more resource-intensive diet, thus impacting not only their health, but also the environment. Most of the cities depend on conventional industrial agriculture and global value chain for feeding. But this system degrades soils and require enormous quantities of water. Yet the consolidation of the retail sector increases food system power imbalance. COVID-19 has further exposed the vulnerability of the present food systems and of global, regional, and national food supply, with many countries and cities facing disruptions, reduction availability, and increased price of fresh nutrition food, accompanied by a rise in food loss and waste, as rightly mentioned by of FAO. So there is a need for countries to diversify their source of food supply and not to put all eggs into only one basket. All eggs, sorry. The diversification of source of food will increase resilience of the country to shocks, to climate change, apart from offering opportunities in terms of job creation by providing farmers more direct access to resources and markets and food security and nutrition. Investments on sustainable urban and peri-agriculture systems can be mentioned as one of the ways for localizing production and gaining multiple benefits, while offering an additional source of food to increase urban dwellers, especially for the poor. The IFP report assessing global land use mentions urban planning or gardening as policy option for better resource management and suggests its integration into urban planning. Urban gardens benefit from the greening of the open spaces, facades, roofs, and etc. But from our own experience, I think one lesson that we can learn is that this gardening need to really be brought at scale if we really want to increase the impact.
Yeah, Dr. Biao, let me ask you this real quick. You mentioned 2050 and that 80% of food will be consumed in cities. So will we be able to achieve net zero by 2050, do you think?
Oh, I think by 2050, if we really, there are urgent actions that need to be taken if we really want to achieve net zero by 2050. One is we need to properly manage, but because food system can place significant pressure on the environment. Food system need also to improve with regard to nutrition. Food system need to do more for farmers. Agriculture provides jobs for over 30% of the global workforce. And there are some 500 million smallholder farmers worldwide. More than 2 billion people depend on them for their livelihood. So I think we also need to look at the food system in a more holistic way if we want to really to achieve net zero by 2050. The other speakers really mentioned the need to promote the value chain, to really limit the post-harvest losses that we have. And a number of initiatives that need to be taken, but I will emphasize the need for a more holistic approach in dealing with the food system. Absolutely. You know, in the past, we used to talk about just look at the ministries of agriculture when it's come to talk about food system. But today, even the ministries of finance should be called upon, because they are the one who, during the budget allocation, they can justify action that can be taken with regard to the food system. The climate change is one of the threats, and climate change is cut across all the development sector, and this is the reason why we need to really look at it as a cross-sectional issue that will need to be dealt with in a more comprehensive manner.
Absolutely. Dr. Juliet Biao, thanks so much. Holistic ways we have to do that in order to turn things around. Thanks so much, Dr. Juliet Biao, Hanneke Faber, and Dr. Maximo Torero. Thank you so much, all of you, for your contributions. And again, enjoy the rest of the AGRF throughout the week. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks so much for being with us, folks. We're going to go on to our next part here, where we'll have an interactive session. And joining us online, Anne Nyaga. She's the Chief Administrative Secretary, Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock, Fisheries, and Cooperatives here in Kenya. Also joining us online, Luis Alfredo Perez, Senior Vice President and Head of Africa Business Unit at Yara International. Joining us here in person, Ms. Elizabeth Nzimadala, President, Pan-African Farmers Organization. Welcome, good to see you. Also joining us online will be Namaika Ikegwonyu. He is the founder and CEO of Cold Hubs Limited. Also joining us online, Dr. Godfrey Bahigwa, ARB Director, African Union, and Mr. Daniel Hailu, Regional Head for East and Southern Africa, MasterCard Foundation. And Nyaga, I'll start with you. If you can hear me, and Nyaga, if you are with us.
Yes, I can hear you, Jeff.
Wonderful. Good to hear from you. Thanks so much for your time. Obviously, there's a lot of questions about what ministries are doing, what line ministries are doing in order to align food systems. And you know, these are critical times. We know these are tough times, and Nyaga, what are line ministries doing to play their part?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jeff. Let me first and foremost start by saying that, of course, in terms of investments from the critical live ministries, and not only in Kenya, but also across board, we have to have a commitment towards our budgeting processes so that we can be able to ensure that agriculture has been taken care of in terms of how we go about our budgeting processes for making investments. Let me say that in terms of the investments that we have done so far, we have, of course, challenges in terms of how the investments, in terms of the percentages of the investments that we're making. Currently, our budget allocations are between 3 to 6%. Of course, this poses some bit of challenge in terms of how we execute, but nevertheless, efforts are being made towards scaling up the budgets towards making investments towards agriculture. Also, we have support in terms of making investments in the post-harvest management, where we've already, as the ministry has already put up various interventions. I'll mention the warehouse receipt system. This one provides an opportunity for safe storage of produce for farmers. We've also put in investments in terms of dryers for maize producing areas, where we are supporting farmers to deal with the issue of aflatoxin. We also have set aside the AflaSafe plant in Katumani to control aflatoxin. Of course, the government has also put in place milk coolers across the country in the 47 counties, and not only in the milk or in the dairy value chain, but also in the blue economy, in the fishing line. Of course, we've been witnessing a lot of shocks in terms of the food systems, where we have the desert locusts. We also have the fall armyworm and the tooth absolute, of course, having the desert armyworm affect the pasture and also the crops, the armyworm maize and the tuta absoluta affecting the horticultural sector. Already, of course, interventions in terms of building the capacity of farmers, not only not only at the county level, but also ensuring that this capacity is entrenched within the very household level so that they can be able to be guided on how to report and also how to intervene. Of
Okay,
course,
and okay. Thanks. Hold that thought, and thank you so much for that. I appreciate post-harvest, very important. Let me go to Elizabeth Nzimadala, who's the only person present here. I'd love to join you over there by your seat, but it's okay. You're fine over there. Talking about farmers on the continent. First of all, what's the average age of the farmer out there? Since you're the president of the Pan-African Farmers Organization, right? What's the average age, and is there still interest, or is farming too old-fashioned for today's generation?
Yeah, thank you very much, Jeff. I think talking about agriculture in Africa and the average age of farming, it really falls under the youth bracket. And that is why we believe that the future of agriculture farming is with the youth. So again, most of the African farms, over 80% of African farms, are owned by smallholder farmers, and they produce more than 80% of the food that is consumed in the continent. So this really places smallholder farmers at the center of food systems, and I really appreciate AGRF partners for bringing us as voice of farmers in Africa to be part of the discussion on food system transformation.
Yeah, it must have been very difficult for smallholder farmers the last 18 months or so because of COVID. It must have put a stop on everything. What's it been like?
Come again?
Challenges of COVID-19.
Yeah, looking at the challenges of COVID-19, of course, we all know that COVID even set in at a point or at the heels of an already broken system that had already been affected by climate change, by insecurity, by outbreak of pests and diseases. We saw the desert locusts that really happened here in Kenya. So I can say the setting of COVID really brought us to a climax of a point where the food systems really got to a standstill. And, but there's a lot that we've really learned with COVID. As farmers, we've tried to be more adaptive as possible. We've tried to be innovative to make sure that we continue offering support services to our constituency. We really came in so fast to conduct different surveys, conduct different studies, to be able to understand the impact of COVID and how we can come in to mitigate on some of those challenges.
Okay,
and
hold that thought. Thank you, Elizabeth. Louis Alfredo Perez, if you can hear me, you heard Elizabeth Nzimadala here talk about a broken system. So the question is, how are private companies accelerating ongoing trends in technology and innovation to keep food supply chains moving?
Yes, hello?
Yeah, Louis?
Hi. Well, let me start by stating the obvious. We are living in a world of high digital connectivity, and Africa should not be left behind. At Yara, we saw the pandemic as an opportunity to transform our traditional engagement with the rural communities in the continent. We decided to take action by donating 40,000 metric tons of fertilizer to 7 countries in East Africa in order to help the smallholder farmers triple their maize production in a year of pandemic and locust invasion. This initiative is called Action Africa, but it didn't come without its challenges. In order to secure that the donation was implemented in a safe and secure manner, we digitized the whole supply chain process, ensuring that every single fertilizer bag reached its intended smallholder recipient via QR technology. The established platform, it's called today Africa Connect. It consists of over 4,000 retailers and 2 million smallholder farmers across Kenya and Tanzania. I can safely state that no other company has achieved such a scale in terms of connectivity in Africa today. Based on simple SMS communication, we are improving the farmers' direct connectivity to seed, agrochemical, fertilizer input providers, but also a retail network, insurance, and finance service providers. We also support disconnected farmers by providing them key agricultural advice, technical advice throughout the growing seasons. And due to the large number of profiles that we have on that platform, we are now able to engage with crop off-takers, trying to ensure a closed-loop ecosystem that will truly improve the livelihood of these smallholders. Our focus is now on building key partnerships to ensure a complete solution.
All right,
We
Louis,
believe, yeah.
Hold that thought, Louis, Alfredo Perez, hold that thought. Let me ask Dr. Godfrey Bahigwa. He's with the African Union. Louis Alfredo Perez says Africa should not be left behind. Dr. Bahigwa, so why are we being left behind?
Yes, I do not think Africa is being left behind, and definitely we cannot be left behind. We are part of the current momentum ongoing with regard to food systems transformation towards the UN Food Systems Summit taking place later this month. And as Africa, we have developed a common position that we are taking to the UN Food Systems Summit later this month. This common position has been developed collectively with regional economic communities, AU member states, our youth, non-state actors, as well as academia. And this process was led by the AU Commission together with the ODA NEPAD in collaboration with the UN Economic Commission for Africa. And this common position has identified 43 game-changing proposals that our member states will use to enhance the implementation of the Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Program, which is a program that is intended to transform agriculture on this continent. So we are not being left behind. Mm-hmm. We are driving the process, and we are part of the global community to try to build resilient food systems globally, but through CADAP, resilient food systems in Africa.
Yeah, but Dr. Bahigwa, there are those who say that the food system is broken here. It's broken down, needs to be built back better.
Yes, that is correct. And we have seen through the effect of the COVID pandemic that a lot of our member states were struggling. We are struggling to feed our people, as well as the disruption in the food production system at farm level, as well as the disruptions through the marketing system. That we do understand. But through the collective efforts of our member states, and especially bringing together ministers of agriculture, ministers of trade, and ministers of finance, the member states have come up with proposals on what to do to address the systemic constraints that make our food systems vulnerable, so that in future, our food systems will be more resilient and they can withstand the shocks such as the COVID-19 and other shocks that may hit our food systems.
All right, Dr. Bahigwa, thanks so much for that. Appreciate it. Let me go to Nyameka Ikegwonyu. He's the founder, CEO of Cold Hubs Limited. Nyameka, I think you recently won an award. Congratulations for that. And obviously, you're still on a roll here. Give us some of the examples. You know, we couldn't imagine farmers being your generation. You know, your generation is more tuned into IT and, you know, online, all that kind of stuff. But now there's a whole generation of farmers, your generation. Tell us about that.
I think a generation of farmers, what they bring that is unique into the space is that they are leveraging massively on the potentials of renewable energy, and also they are also accelerating the digitalization of agriculture. within the renewable energy space, they are using this energy to actually provide infrastructure at a pace that is unknown, both in deploying solar irrigation to support production, in deploying solar milling, grinding, deshelling equipment to support processing at different levels, and also deploying solar cold storage and solar dryers for post-harvest management and storage. My generation is also embracing digitalization at that pace that farmers are now closer to consumers, enabling them to negotiate fair prices for their produce. They are reaching both young and old farmers with different sensors for soil data gathering, for monitoring of crop growth, for apps and mobile phones for controlled irrigation, drones to optimize agriculture, all manner of apps for certification and traceability of food, And these generation are basically young social entrepreneurs all across Africa who are launching several startups to provide services to farmers, to embrace farming in a different way. And I have always echoed that these startups should be supported with all manner of funding and technical assistance to enable them go to scale. Because within a short period of time, my generation has proven that bringing renewable energy and digitalization, that we can increase production, reduce the cost of production, increase income of farmers, and also have safe, nutritious food available for local consumption.
Now, Emeka, obviously you're very hopeful. Are you optimistic about the future?
I am optimistic about the future. I am optimistic that more young people are going to embrace agriculture, exploring the potentials within agriculture, digitalization. But for young people to really embrace agriculture, we need as much support as possible, not from the older generation, but from all institutions, from all organizations, and to also see most of the young African entrepreneurs as solvers of the problems which they have seen in their environment. And such solutions, are really sustainable. It achieves resilience and transform the food systems eventually.
Absolutely. Let me bring in Daniel Hailu here. He's the regional head for East and Southern Africa for MasterCard Foundation. Daniel, if you can hear me, what are private companies doing to accelerate ongoing trends in, let's say, technology and innovation? Daniel?
Yep, definitely. I can hear loud and clear. Good afternoon to everyone in Nairobi and to everyone online. So there was a few things raised, Jeff, in the previous exchanges that I was noting down. I didn't want to let the average age question pass. I think it's important because I'm going to speak about young people. So the average age of a farmer across the continent of Africa is about 60 years old, 60. The average age maybe 55 in some countries, it may be a little more in others, but about 60. Now, keep that in mind and also reference that 60% of the population on the continent is under the age of 25, right? So when you think about those opposing figures, to the point that Nemeka was just making, we need to shift. There needs to be a shift in order for us to address the gap that's emerged. We need to get young people motivated and interested in agriculture, and that's a team sport. It requires everyone that's participating in this event to play a role in that, because ultimately that is where the future is. But having said that, to go back to your question, Jeff, in terms of private sector, so the MasterCard Foundation is a private foundation. We work with private organizations, we work with government, and we believe a big part of what needs to happen is that motivation, that incentivization for private sector to come in and play a role. So we focus on education, we focus on access to finance solutions, and everything that goes in between to provide young people a platform to be motivated enough to consider agriculture as a career, as a destination for work. Because if we don't have the right balances, if the incentivization is not there, young people are looking for business opportunities, whether it's, as you mentioned, IT or agriculture. It has to make business sense. And I believe there is a way for it to make sense. We believe there's a way for it to make sense. So I'll give a few examples. And I think the digital realm is an important one. It's not just playing a role in terms of making farming easier to access, but it's providing transformative solutions for breaking down barriers that have prevented scaling of businesses. So digital platforms that essentially allow for smaller farmers aggregating their yield to be able to access market effectively, rather than lose out to a lot of the middlemen, middle persons, if you will, that play a role in terms of taking away their profitability. So there's a lot of digital platforms that are out and about. I'll name one, and again, this is just comes to mind because we're in Nairobi, and so people may be familiar with it, but the Twiga model is an interesting one. We're very familiar with it. It's something that has really broken down some barriers, and there's others as well. That's not the only one that's doing that approach. The other side of it, if you will, in terms of what does it take for agriculture to be attractive to private sector is scale, and that scale and that market access element is important, but also the notion of enabling businesses that the fuel that they need to exist comes down to a discussion on financial solutions that are tailor-made to align with the needs of smaller farmers. And this is a gap, right? Access to finance, financial inclusion, whatever you want to call it, it's not a new subject, but the fact that it needs to be tailored to the needs of smaller farmers is critical. So the foundation, Mastercard Foundation, is working with organizations that are looking to provide that tailored solution. A lot of it is digital, and so fintech, agri-tech solutions that are combined to provide these channels for effective delivery of financial needs. And so DigiFarm comes to mind as well, and I'm just naming some examples here because these are brand names that are out there, but there's many more out there as well that are looking to solve the same problems. In short, Jeff, I'll just come back and say it's a team sport. Private sector has a large role to play in creating that transformative environment. Government, national, county level, local level also has a role to play because smaller farmers exist in an environment where they are interacting at a very local level. So that reality that they face in terms of policy that needs to be optimized, whether it's their ability to have land and manage land effectively, taxes. There's a lot that goes into the ecosystem, Jeff, but I just thought that would be an important picture for us to paint at this point.
Absolutely, great points, Daniel. And you just mentioned a figure to me that's really absolutely shocking. In 5 years' time, I guess I'll retire into farming if the average age is 60. But my question to you is, how do we make farming sexy, for lack of a better word, to a younger generation? How do we do that?
Yeah, I think so. We do. So the foundation does a lot of outreach, listening sessions, and what comes back a lot is, people are looking to enter a space that's going to allow them to have dignified, fulfilling work opportunities. So we're not going to be successful motivating young people to become subsistence farmers. That is not attractive to anybody. That's a tough existence. So it has to be a business. And the term that we use, and I've heard being used, is agripreneurship, right? It's a business. Just like somebody may start a business selling, retailing, or creating a platform, it has to be a business first and foremost. If it's not a destination of attraction. The second one is there are solutions that are available today that were not available 10, 15 years ago. So Nemeka mentioned digital platforms for one, and those play a significant role in making knowledge that was not available to farmers available to them at a very easy and continuously accessible channel through that digital device that they have in their hands, a phone, for example. So you're not stuck in the field in a rural location where you're trying to run a business and you just don't know what's happening. You're buying inputs, you're putting seeds in the ground. It's not working for you. You don't know why. So there are solutions that are coming into play that demystifies, I would say, farming. Because if not, the trial and error approach, easy to say, sitting at a desk, but when you're a farmer trying to run a business and you're investing your inputs and it's not working, that's a difficult dynamic to overcome. So I think to make it exciting, to make it attractive, it's these solutions that are out there, but making them more available, democratizing these solutions for access. The last thing I would just say is there's an important element around knowledge as well, right? Our young people across the continent who, because they're not seeing agriculture as a landing spot, it's not being prioritized in our education system as well. So when people graduate from vocational schools or even universities or even secondary school, they're not coming out full of knowledge about how to become agripreneurs. So we have to address that as well. If we don't address that, there's a gap that emerges, which is really hard to close down once young people are out in the workforce.
Daniel Hailu, very good points there. Appreciate that. Let me come back to you, Anne Nyaga, if you can hear us, the Chief Administrative Secretary of Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock, Fisheries and Cooperatives in Kenya. Anne, if you're still with us, is farming, the aspect of farming, is it a difficult sell? Is it a tough sell for the youth, for a generation of young Kenyans, for example?
Thank you, Jeff. I would say that farming is not a hard sell. It all depends on how well we present the sector to the young people and particularly to the children. And some of the ways that we can be able to achieve that is, of course, through the development of policies and the strategies which are then aligned to be able to interest the children to be able to partake of these particular activities.
But Anne, you heard what Daniel Hailu just said. The average age of the farmer in Africa is 60 years old, Anne, 60.
Yes, Jeff. And one of the things, if I may continue, Jeff, is, we have to catch these children young when they're at a formative age, so that, it is a continuous investment process from them where we tackle it through the, the mindset, the mind change, so that the children can then start transitioning or looking at agriculture as a career option from when they're young. But of course, again, as a transition and, advance in terms of age, where they become maybe say 18 years plus and up to the year where there's the capping on the youth age, of course, investments and best policies and strategies to be able to not only nurture them, but also, again, give them financing. Because one of the things that has been keeping the youth out of the agricultural sector is knowledge transfer, skill development, what we call incubating their business ideas, not only guiding them, but knowing also these youth need financial access. And also the youth, in terms of the financial access, we know that they don't have collateral. So again, being able to build programs that are then being able to, give them the finances without asking them for collateral. Mm-hmm. These are programs that Kenya is already implementing. We have the Enable Youth program, which again, we already have youth who are being taken through incubation and will be given finances. Of course, we are not asking them for collateral, but what we want to make sure we give them is give them the skill and also still introduce agriculture practices through the education system, where we are saying we are reintroducing the agricultural clubs back in primary schools and also in high schools, so that it's not only something that we start addressing when they're already of a formed mind, but also being able to catch them when they're young for the change of mindset.
Absolutely. Good point there, Anne. Catch them when they're young. Dr. Godfrey Bahigwa, if you're still with us, when we talk about intra-Africa trade, for example, recently introduced Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. I mean, Africa is not utilizing that enough. We're not jumping on that bandwagon with much enthusiasm. Why?
Well, first of all, the trading under the Africa Continental Free Trade Area only started this January. So we are just 9 months into that trading. But having said that, as a continent, we are very excited about the prospects that the Continental Free Trade Area is going to bring to increase trade within Africa and also with the rest of the world. But having said that, in order to realize the full benefits of the CFTA, 3 things have to be done by our African countries. One is improving food safety by investing in national and regulatory systems so that the quality of food that is produced and traded across borders is safe for consumption. Secondly, is removing trade barriers, especially non-tariff barriers. Research has shown that the removal of non-tariff barriers has a higher positive impact on boosting trade than actual removal of tariffs. So all these administrative and policy constraints have to be removed by our member states in order to actualize the benefits of the CFTA. And finally, we need to work through our regional economic communities in order to harmonize trade policies, and that will facilitate increased trade across our borders and across the different regional economic communities.
How long is that going to take, Dr. Baigo? Is that going to take another 50 years?
I do not think so. I think that depends on the commitment that will be exhibited by our leaders. And so through these forums like the AGRF 2021 that we are holding, and the conversation that will be had with the leaders, heads of state, the ministers of agriculture and ministers of finance, we hope that the messages will sink, that they need to facilitate trade through the three measures that I just outlined.
All right. Luis Alfredo Perez, if you're still with us, Senior Vice President and Head of Business at Yara International.
Yes.
Can we build back better as a continent?
Yes, we can. And as stated, what we need is focus. Focus and collaboration. Collaboration across private and public actors to make it happen. Technology is there. We can reach it. We can extend it. It can achieve scale. So we can definitely build back better. Fully on board on that.
That's a good point. That's good. Elizabeth Nsimadala, I'm going to leave the last word to you, so hold on quite a second, okay? I'll leave, since you're here in person, you'll have the last word. Let me go to Nyameka Ikegwenyu. If you're still with me, Nyameka?
Yes, I'm still with you.
Good. So you've heard the experts. You've heard them talk about this. There's so much potential on the continent. Do you feel that from where you stand or where you sit in Nigeria? Do you feel that? That there's such a positivity, but then all hands have to be on deck.
Yes, I do feel there is a lot of positivity, and all hands should be on deck. But I also think that interventions are slow. I'm a social entrepreneur, and we always want interventions to be fast. As an entrepreneur, we race against time at every point in time. So I think there is a lot of positivity. I think there is a lot of understanding of the need to support agricultural development, leveraging on the success that several entrepreneurs have already achieved. But I really think it's slow, and I really desire a faster move towards this.
Yeah, good point there. Thank you, Nyameka, and congratulations on your recent award as well. Elizabeth Nsimadala, you get the last word here. Tell us, you've heard all the experts this afternoon. What are your thoughts going forward?
Yeah, I think going forward, like the experts have said, you really see that farmers are key in making sure that we transform the agriculture sector in Africa. So we really need to see how we can build mutual partnerships with farmers, strengthen the farmers' organizations so that they can be able to support their constituencies. We need to embrace digitization, a number of innovations across Africa. We also need to tap into the potential of the mobile phones, for example, penetration in Africa, and see how we can support smallholder farmers to be able to do agriculture as business using innovations like mobile phones, where they can be able to aggregate their production, aggregate their input demand, but also be able to access services using innovations.
At the end of the day, are you hopeful for the future of this continent?
Of course, I'm very hopeful. 60% of arable land globally still lies in Africa. We have the highest youth population, which is an assurance of labor on the continent. We have the Africa Continental Free Trade Area that has just recently been launched, which offers us the biggest actually global market. Then we have, again, when you look at climate change, yes, we are affected as Africa as a continent, but it's not so diverse like other regions. So it is still within our means, and as farmers, we can really adapt and make sure that we mitigate to some of the effects of climate change. So I can say all the conditions are very ripe for a bright future, a bright, sustainable, food sustainable future for Africa.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much, Elizabeth Nsimadala. Daniel Hailu, if you're still with us, can I get a final word from you going forward in this post or COVID-19 period? It's not post because it's not going away. How do we live this new normal? How do we overcome this new normal?
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Absolutely still with us and will be with us despite everybody's considered efforts. I think first and foremost, we have to learn from this experience. And we've seen very stark demonstration of the accelerants that are available to us and to industry. And digital comes to mind again. So if you think back to last year, the businesses that thrived, that were able to manage through the disruption were those that were able to put themselves on a digital platform or on a digital setting. So we know that that has to be part of the solution. It doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're in commerce, if you're an enterprise, that has to be part of the solution. I think what else we saw, and this was very clearly demonstrated for us, was the MasterCard Foundation is focused on young people, in particular young women. And the reason for that is because we know that that is the demographic that is most disadvantaged. And we saw it again during the pandemic. Because of the disruptions to work, the disruptions to education, it was a severe impact on young women in particular. And there's a lot of statistics out there that point to that. And I think that, again, highlights the need for us to focus our attention on empowering, enabling those demographics, because otherwise the gap continues to grow. So we must learn and take advantage of what has emerged. The last thing I would point to is, so the foundation recognized early on that there was a potential for food security to be disrupted because of the pandemic. So we looked at that space. It's not a space that the foundation typically works in. It's an emergency response space. And what we saw that was interesting was after the first few months of disruptions, the actual chain, if you will, from production all the way to market found its way. I wouldn't say it stabilized, but it managed to regulate itself. Again, market forces are in effect that do that. And part of that is because of the fact that we are seeing this continent evolving. This disruption, had it happened maybe 30, 40 years ago, potentially there could have been significantly more impact on us as a continent. And so we are improving, Jeff. So your question of, are we optimistic? Are things getting better? Are they going in the right direction? I would absolutely say so. And I think that was demonstrated by how we responded as a continent and at a country level, at a Pan-African level to the pandemic. But now let us not lose the chance to take advantage of the lessons that I've learned. Lots of countries have come up with response plans. Some of them are still just plans, Jeff. And we now need to change gears and come around the table in terms of how we activate and drive forward into implementation. It really does come down to delivery, Jeff. Policy, strategy, kind of put them into the same bucket. But unless they're implemented and carried through to fruition, it remains just an aspiration. So I would just point that out. And again, optimistic, looking forward, focused on the young people, and particularly young women, and here to be part of the solution. Thank you, Jeff. Absolutely. Thank you, Daniel. Policy, strategy, implementation. Well put there. Daniel Hailu, thanks for your time. Elizabeth Simbadala, thank you so much. Naemeka Ikegunyu, thank you too. Luis Alfredo Perez, Dr. Godfrey Bahigwa, and Nyaga, thank you so much, all of you, for being part of this great discussion. And let's continue discussing. Let's continue talking. This is all about food systems transformation, accelerating action. Keep tweeting, keep interacting. The hashtag, as you all know, is AGRF 2021. Let's keep talking. At the end of the day, we have to keep talking if this continent is going to move on. Thanks so much, folks. Enjoy the rest of the summit, the events. We'll see you back here tomorrow morning.